Welcome back to The Lead. It's time now for the Politics Lead. Believe it or not, we are now just 28 days until the 2014 midterm elections, and the negative TV ads are starting to loop and draw blood. An analysis by the Wesleyan Media Project of Senate ads show 55% of all those ads we watch on TV are aiming below the belt, including these 6, all from Democrats, all debuting in your living room over the last week. Democrats have been more eager than Republicans to open up the old opposition research file and use the airwaves to attack their opponents, according to that same study. But the map and the math nonetheless suggest President Obama's party still might need something of a miracle to avoid losing control of the Senate. Here to break it all down for us, CNN Chief National Correspondent John King. John, I've been on the phone and emailing with Democrats all day. They're a little bit worried. The math looks pretty tough. It looks as though they have the more difficult task in the next 4 weeks to keep the Senate.
They are still holding out some hope of keeping the Senate, Jake, but you're dead right on that point. They have a much more difficult math. Let's start with the basic math. Republicans need a net gain of 6 seats. Remember the word net. It'll be important in a minute. They need a net gain of 6 seats. Now, where will they get them? Well, let's just start with the easy ones. These are 13 Senate races we're watching. States are highlighted that we're watching. Here's why it's so hard for the Democrats. The ones in blue are held by Democratic incumbents. There are really only 3 states held by Republicans we're watching closely. So to get the 6, the Democrats start with these 3. Republicans start with these 3, and even Democratic consultants concede Montana, South Dakota, and West Virginia are likely to go red. So that gives the Republicans 3 right off the top.
Good. Republicans in those states are already ahead in the polls by double digits. It looks like those states are gone. So where does that leave us? What do Democrats and Republicans have to do with the remaining states?
So look at how the Republicans think they get to 6. If that's 3, how do they get 3 more? Well, they start in Alaska. They think they're ahead right now by several points. Dan Sullivan, the Republican, against the Democratic incumbent, Mark Begich. Democrats say this isn't over yet, but Republicans think that one is trending their way. That's one. Then you come over to Arkansas. Interesting, Bill Clinton was just there the other day. He's trying to help his home state senator, the Democrat Mark Pryor. But Tom Cotton has opened up a lead. It's a small lead, but it has now been a consistent lead of 4 or 5 points in that race. Republicans think that will trend their way. The third one they think that is likely to go Republican is Louisiana. This one's a little complicated, Jake. You have 2 Republican candidates. Bill Cassidy is the lead Republican candidate. Mary Landrieu is your Democratic incumbent. This one might not be decided until December. You have to get 50% plus 1 to win in Louisiana, so the top 2 candidates could end up in a runoff, but Republicans think even if it goes to December, they get this one. Now, what if Republicans don't get to 6 from there? That's where it does get interesting. Then you go into the blue states. Republicans are in a close race in Iowa, leaning slightly Democratic, but the Republicans could still get that one. The Democrat, Jeanne Shaheen, slightly ahead in New Hampshire. The former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown is the Republican up there. Still in play, but leaning Democratic. North Carolina is a very interesting one. Most Republicans thought that one would go their way, but the Democratic incumbent, Kay Hagan, is running a pretty good race. She is slightly ahead. But again, slightly ahead in the final days of a midterm election campaign. Republicans think even one of those could trend their way. President Obama is the issue in those states. And he did win New Hampshire and Iowa big. Remember, North Carolina, he won the first time, lost the second time. It's the ultimate swing state.
What Democrats told me today is that the President Obama, however much they love him, he's an albatross around their necks right now. His poll numbers are so bad, people not feeling good about the state of the economy, even if there are economic indicators that things are getting better, wages are stagnant. And then there's this wild card on the map also, John. There's this weirdness going on in the middle of the country, the Great Plains state of Kansas.
Click your heels, Dorothy. You wouldn't think that Kansas would be part of the conversation in what's supposed to be a Republican year, but Pat Roberts has run a lousy campaign from day one, in part not being able to explain why he spends most of his time living in Virginia, not home in Kansas.
Does he even have residence in Kansas?
He says he does at a friend's house. That's been part of the controversy there, so he's there now. Look, he's in trouble. The poll came out yesterday, showed him down like 10 points to an independent. Now, Greg Orman, this is interesting. Greg Orman, the Democrat, dropped out. The courts upheld the Democrats' decision to drop out. Greg Orman is an independent businessman. He's given money to Mitt Romney. He's also given money to Harry Reid and Barack Obama. Roberts is saying he's a Democrat in disguise, but right now Orman's ahead. We might end election night and wake up the next day with Greg Orman in some way being the most powerful man in American politics, potentially able to decide control of the Senate.
And he hasn't said whether he would caucus with the Democrats or the Republicans.
And Roberts is trying to make that an issue in the closing weeks. He says he'll caucus with whoever would be in the majority. So he says he will choose essentially leverage for Kansas in that decision. What if it's 49 Republicans, 50 Democrats, and Orman's decision, could decide the balance? What if the Democrats have Joe Biden over here in reserve and Orman's decision could decide the balance? So in a wacky election year, that one's probably the wackiest
crazy, and it's only 4 weeks away. It's really going to be a nail-biter. John King, thank you so much.
4 weeks.